Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Mr. Ken Lundin, Lundin from RevHeat is going to be on the call with us. We are going to talk about the most important thing I think you can condition in your business. But before we tell you what that is, we're gonna delve into what's the difference between somebody goes from 100,000 to $1 billion, right? And how is our brain working in this process? Because most people are missing this first step that takes you from 100,000 to 500 to 1 million to 10 million, on and on and on. Every time we grow or want to grow, there is a sequence of steps that our brain actually goes through. And if you can't get off the mark, right? If you can't get from point A to point B, you're not going to get to point C, point D, point E, and so on and so on. Ken and I are going to discuss this at length, and we're going to show you how you can do it as well. It's very, very, very straightforward once you know the pathway and the process. All right. Speaking of pathway and process, those of you who want to increase your sales, you want to do it easier. You want to do it in a predictable way, your sales revenue, and or you would like to automate and personalize and have meaningful follow-up, reach out to me directly at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com by email. And just put in the subject line, I want to create predictable revenue. I want better follow-up, whatever it is. We'll have a conversation and let's see how we can help you. Without further ado, let's go speak to Ken right now. Hey, Ken, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
What is going on, Doug? I've been looking forward to this for a minute, so let's go.
Oh, let's go. Yeah, I was reading over our notes prior to this, and I was getting more and more excited about this because I really want to talk about this subject. It's one of those subjects that people go, do I really need to hear this? And the answer is yes. So here's the reason why. We're going to talk about what it takes to kind of get, what's the difference between someone who grows to like $1 billion versus someone who grows to, say, I don't know, 100 million or 10 million or a million or 100,000, right? So,
yeah.
And this is probably, folks, if you're not paying attention, please do, because this is probably the most important subject you're ever going to hear in your life. Our brains have a way of taking us places, or they have a way of holding us from going, or actually taking us the other way, right? So Ken, what is the difference? Or, firstly, I guess probably the best question would ask is, why the heck is our mind like do what it does?
Yeah, but we're gonna get deep into the psychology. So I only play a psychologist on television and podcasts, but other than that, I have no medical degree. So I just want to be clear: use this at your own peril. I think the number one thing, and I think the correct word that I've heard over the years is homeostasis. Like we just crave the same thing. Like we crave predictability and normalcy. And we don't even realize, like we say, we're entrepreneurs, we're CEOs, we're business owners. We assume that makes us infallible to that problem. And honestly, part of the problem is you are looking for the same way to solve problems that you have always solved them in. You're just using different words and letters. And so I think, you can look at that in society, right?
Right.
Be body positive or whatever. 60% of America is obese. Now, I don't care. Do what you want to do. But there's not a doctor on the planet who's going to tell you that waist size doesn't correspond with more disease. But we want to be comfortable, so we just kind of keep doing our thing, and we use different words to describe how we're trying it. So same things in business. And Doug, what do you see when you're talking to people about this?
I see similar things to answer the question, but I love what you said. You think, okay, now I'm going to enter as an entrepreneur. So I'm separating myself from the actual reality of being a couch potato, as people used to say in the old days, right? So, but it is so true. And I find it fascinating, Ken, because right now, I go to the gym every day if I can. And my wife and I go together and we walk in the gym, and it's in January now, and late January. And the gym, I've noticed in the first couple of weeks, it was completely full. Like you couldn't get a treadmill. You couldn't, we walk in like, where all these people come from? And then we're like, oh, it's January 1st, right?
Yeah.
Now it's about, I'd say about be somewhere between a third and half less of people are actually at the gym 27 days later.
Yeah.
And I predict somewhere around February 15th or so, it'll be back to like normal, right? Or darn close to normal.
Yeah.
And I looked up the gyms only operate on like a 12% capacity. Like they only project that 12% of the users are actually going to stay with the gym year round. And so what do I think? I think that's human nature. And you brought up, I think, a really good point, which is your homeostasis, right? Or we want to stay safe. We want to stay secure. And does that go all the way back? Like when, we were hunter gatherers or whatever that, you know what I mean? Like you turn the corner and they're like, oh, a bear, I'm in trouble, right? Is that kind of the same type of thing, or is it something different?
Well, no, I think if you're talking about the idea of, so everybody's heard the saying fight or flight, right? Right. That's your lizard brain. That's how, but they forget it's fight, flight, or freeze.
Oh.
It's a pretty big miss when you think about it, right? Because two of them that you generally like to say, fight or flight, are about action. I'd argue that the third one is what we do most of the time, is that we freeze. Like, the best thing about the beginning of this year and going to the gym. Oh, and by the way, all your New Year's resolutions about how the business is going to change. Quitters Friday happened on the 10th of the month. Quitters Friday is the second Friday in January when almost everybody has given up on their New Year's resolutions. So the gym got unpacked faster. And now I have less people using social media to sell against me and my companies. Like, it's great because Quitters Friday put everybody off because we all want homeostasis. We all go back to the thing we do because change is uncomfortable. And as a CEO, how do you embody change when you're saying, I promise you're saying you're expecting it of your team. And you know what you do? You convince yourself you are leading through change, and what you are actually doing is showing them that you're going to do the same damn thing over and over again, and they have to somehow change you. And that's why you get stuck at $1 million, $5 million, $10 million, or $100 million instead of going to $1 billion in valuation. And that's a really big deal.
All right. So let's make the assumption people on the other side here listening and going, all right, this makes sense, which it does. How the hell do I change? Like, I'm an owner. I have a $5 million company. I want to get to 10. I was listening to Tony Robbins yesterday, Ken.
He knows something about change.
Yeah, and he was talking about, this process of, as we go through life, we go through different seasons in life and all of this stuff, right? But he also said something like, when you're in your 20s, it's like you want to conquer the world, right? And it's like, well, I'm going to grow $1 billion company. I'm going to have this. I'm going to go that, and I'm going to do this. And then he says you start going along doing that, and you learn that it's not as easy as you thought it was going to be, right? And so let's say somebody's at, I don't know, 5 million or 50 million or whatever, and they want to go to the next level, or even if they're at, $50,000 right now, right? So some solo entrepreneurs may be listening. What do I got to do as a human being to move myself past this homeostasis, move myself past this freeze point? Because we generally freeze because it's some type of fear. That's what I believe anyways. And we all do it. I don't care. I mean, I know billionaires who do it now, right?
Yeah.
They get there, but it's usually on maybe not the business issue, but it might be on a personal issue, right? They're like having challenges with their spouse, for example, and they freeze instead of actually, going to the fight or flight. Yeah. So how does one kind of reframe this process to get out of this so we can, because that description you just made with the owner, the employee is going to do what the owner does, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
They're going to look at the owner and they're going to go, oh, well, he leaves on, Thursday at 2:00 and doesn't come back until Monday or whatever. So, we really don't have to work like he's talking about, right? Or she's talking about.
Right. Yeah. So first thing, let's talk about seasons. I just don't want to go fly past that because I think honestly, the way people think about that, that's one of the biggest constraints for people who use that language. So I'm going to so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to acknowledge that it is absolutely accurate that we have different seasons in our life. But the thing that people do is they fall down on explaining that a little further. Because let's say that it's winter and that I might be in, I don't know, New England versus Florida or Atlanta. Well, I can choose where I want to be based on how long I want my winter to last.
True.
And most of the time when people say I'm in seasons, they say I'm in seasons without actually knowing when the season is going to end. And for me, that's the first thing, because what you're doing is you're taking things that you have no control over and you're just saying, well, I'm just going to let it kind of go. So first thing, there's all sorts of people who've talked about it and they're not wrong. But I talk about this. I have a 3-foot rule. I put my hands out for those of you who can't see on the video. I turn around, I act like I got like lasers pointing down off of my fingertips. And I put no emotional energy into anything that I can't actually change. But if comes into my 3-foot radius and I can control it, I put effort into it, I take accountability for it, and I do it. So one is we can choose how long to be in a season. I recently was going through what I didn't even realize was a pretty bad season. But one of the things I pride myself on, and this even lasted longer for me than normal, is it only lasted about 6 weeks. Because I decided what I could change. So that's kind of the seasons component, but the secondary component you asked was brilliant, which was, well, how do I change it? Well, first you got to be aware of it, right? Just let's drive some awareness. But the second thing is, and this is so simple, yet not so easy. And that is find the smallest common denominator of the change you want to have and do it. The smallest thing. James Cleary has a lot of great stuff in his book, Atomic Habits, and he says you fail to the level of your systems. That's good for you internally too. And I can't remember if I took this from him or not because his book's called Atomic Habits, but we start using a term called habit stacking. So James, if I stole that out of your book, here's all the credit. I'm sorry. So it's called habit stacking. And we say so as an example, we keep going back to the gym and you can see all sorts of people. Give me a fit person, a not fit person. Ask me, they both have the same capabilities. Who am I going to hire? Well, probably the fit person because they can show delayed gratification. They can show discipline, right? The characteristics that you want. But when you really start to think about kind of that idea of what the gym looks like and the smallest change possible, most people go, I want to lose 37 pounds. Well, first of all, they don't say 37, so they say 30 or 40 or 20 because we don't like to get specific because then we can hold ourselves accountable. So that's first, right? Second component is then they go, I'm going to go to the gym 72 days a week. I'm going to eat nothing but perfect. I'm not going to drink. Well, why don't you just do this? Don't miss 2 days in a row and don't eat after 8 p.m. Let's start there. Right? Smallest levels. And I know it was a long-winded, but you got me all fired up about seasons and all the other stuff. That's how we start to make changes, whether it's business or life. Find the smallest thing you can do.
So it's the small, quick wins that sort of build upon other quick wins that give us the momentum and the confidence to kind of keep moving forward.
Well, but it's on an ongoing basis because you have to create it as a behavior. Like for me, we even launched a newsletter called Sales Fit. We have a part of a company process we're launching called Get Sales Fit. And the whole point of it is you have to be able to make it part of your process and your identity. If it's important to you, find your why. My why when I got in shape originally was that I felt like I was always tired and could not play with my children.
Mm-hmm.
My why at 53 is my daughter turned 25 and wanted to go rock climbing, and I was up the wall with her. It's still the same, but now my extended why is I want to do it with my grandkids. And those are powerful. But we can, we've talked a lot about how you frame it here, but we can definitely, I mean, there's a lot you can do on a business side too.
So let's shift over there to the business side. If I want to get from 5 to, I don't know, 8 million, right? Because
Yep.
and let's say I'm netting 20%, right? That gives
Yep.
me an extra $600,000 a year to go
Yep.
play with my grandkids or do whatever. Do we have to find the same motivator within that process? Because what I'm hearing is without that why,
Mhm.
we tend to stay in the homeostasis, right? Because there's nothing motivating us. Like, if we were, I love it because, we're both in the sales field, and, people go, well, I can't make that extra call. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that. And then I'd ask a question. Listen, if you were, let's say you had a broken leg and you're lying on the sofa downstairs and you hear your 4-year-old screaming, and you look up the stairs and there's smoke coming out of the stairs, and I said, are you just going to lie there on the sofa, or what are you going to do? And every one of them says the same thing, Ken. Oh, I'd crawl up that stairs. I'd snap that leg cast off. I'd do whatever I had to
Yeah.
do to get to my child. And I'd say, well, okay, so you have reasons to get up those stairs, right? Even
Yeah.
though you told us all you couldn't walk before that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they say, yeah, sure. And it's like, oh, so now it's analogous to, okay, what do we need to find in the business thing? Because I've found that people won't move, just like you said, they stay in homeostasis. So how does one find that
Yeah.
reason that's compelling enough to move?
Yeah, I think it's got to be personalized. So how about here's the failure. I filed bankruptcy in 2011.
Mhm.
So I can stand before you now, and I've learned a ton of lessons, and we've worked with, 60 plus companies, and we've had a lot of success, and our clients have. But I can tell you a lot of that success is born from just getting my absolute head handed to me. And so in 2011, I filed bankruptcy. It was right out of the Great Recession. Everybody else gives me a pass and says, "Well, Ken, it was the Great Recession," and I say no, because I've still got buddies who are in that exact same business now, and we're 13 years later.
Right.
Right. So it's Ken's. There were choices I could have made. So that's one. But in doing so, life was really hard in 2000 and kind of end of 9 and in 10. And the reason it was so hard is because I hadn't really declared where I was going. So I can tell you what I did do. I declared that I was exiting the business in November of 2011. Come crook or whatever the saying is. But I was exiting. And all the decisions leading up to that, after I made that decision, were incredibly simple, might be the wrong word, but it was easy to decide what the right decision was because I had figured out the end. And so if you want to go from 5 to 8 million, as an example, CEOs say that all the time. I want to go from 10 to 20. So my first question is, in what time frame? Because everybody leaves it off.
Right.
The next question I have is, why? Do you want to sell the company? Is there a particular reason for this? Do you want to get in a position to buy more companies? Is there something about the increase in staff size that will allow you to kind of let go of some of the things you've been doing because you'll have more revenue to support a bigger structure? Just wanted to go to 5 from 8. Like, you've properly diagnosed it. It's like we've gotten into this like where we think it's cool to run companies by Excel spreadsheet. And the awesome thing about that is all I got to do is change one freaking cell, and then the entire variable structure changes. And all of a sudden I've made an extra $1 million without actually understanding the work. Because I think the 4 most important things you can do, and it's an old training modification, is understand the why. What is it that you need to do? How are you going to do it? Which is where a lot of that friction and fear starts when we're talking about freezing. But here's the one, and here's why your teams don't do well either. Most of them need a little how, but here's what they really need to know, just like you. They need to know the now. What's the very first action that I need to take in order to get on the road to my goal?
So what I'm hearing you say, if I got it correct, and by the way, I agree with you on most people don't know where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, I don't know if this is something we could probably delve into too, but I teach this similar thing, which is what's your truthful goal?
Yeah.
Not your subjective goal.
Oh, I love that. Truthful. Love that.
Right? Because I have found that people have subjective goals. Oh, I want to go from 5 to 10. I want to go here. It's like, all right. And then why do we want to do it? Right.
Well, and the subjective goal is usually because somebody else told me I should.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that goes back to, what do you really want to be to yourself? Right. When it comes down to like, so I find that this is where people all the time run amok, so to speak. Right. I mean, I once worked with a company, they were doing $200 million and they were miserable. The company was miserable.
Yes.
Like, and when it got to the owner and it's like, well, what do you really want? He's like, I don't really want this. Like I built it, it got bigger than I did. And it's like, well, restructure.
No.
He ended up restructuring the company. The company ended up doing 80 million, but he loves his life. And it's like, well, how much money do you need? Like, so what is the truthful goal? I mean, do you need to make $12 million a year? Are you okay with 6? It's like, I would make a strong argument that people who had 6 million a year can live a pretty decent quality of life. Right. So
yes.
So I love what you said there, because it's like, in what time frame? Because people don't quantify it.
Yeah.
So the question is, if we don't know what we truthfully want, or we can't admit it at least, and we don't know what time frame we want it in, how the hell are we ever supposed to hit the goal in the time frame? I mean, maybe it happens, but what I'm hearing is you're saying reverse engineer it. Once you know what the why is, what the goal is, the time frame is, just reverse engineer it. And the most important part is taking step number 1, which is that getting it into motion and getting the physics working, right? The law of motion, what
starts in motion stays in
motion, right?
Yeah.
So is that the accurate formula?
Yeah, you got to do one thing. I mean, I think that it's a much broader thing, right? There's so much missing from it, particularly when you're talking about business growth and not just kind of changing things. You have to get in motion. You have to do the thing. I always tell people I've got 2 rules when we do training and development, right? One is, if whatever you're doing is working, don't change a thing. Mm-hmm. The second rule is, though, be truthful with yourself. Because too often, like we had a client that was in cybersecurity, they had a sales rep that we had come in to kind of help this company, and that a sales rep hadn't sold anything in 18 months. So we're helping restructure outbound sequences and all this stuff and hunting and prospecting. And we go, here, let us help you with this. He goes, I have a process and it works. You haven't sold anything in 18 months.
18 months.
First be truthful with yourself, I think, is the thing. When you talk about business growth, one of the biggest gaps in being truthful with yourself is CEOs don't understand all the things that are involved in a proper performing system and process for sales. And they try to say, well, because here's what they do, right? I've had clients like this, you've had clients like this. Every CEO under 5 million has been like this. Well, I had success selling, and I'm not even a salesperson.
Right. You're also
yes. Yeah. So ready? So let's demystify right now. We'll cut this piece out. You and I'll put it on our website so we can explain to CEOs the difference between them having success selling and other people.
Yeah.
Because I'm convinced this is it. First, you generally functioned with people who came in by referral, knew you personally, or knew somebody who knew you personally. So first, you've got an implied, know, like, and trust. Second is, you tended to only talk to people who were at the bottom of the funnel or buying process. They were not in a consideration phase. They were not in a consideration phase. They weren't at the top of the funnel. They weren't trying to become aware. They weren't trying to figure things out. They were down here and they were just going, we're going to decide, and we just got to decide who. So you didn't have to actually take people through something accorded. The reason your deals took 45 days and your sales reps take 120 days is because you're telling them, go talk to people who've never heard about us before. The reason your sales reps are complaining that they don't have enough marketing collateral or proof points or testimonials is because you never needed them. Mm-hmm. And now you think, well, I never needed them. Why do you need them? So my contention with CEOs is this. I believe that the number one thing a CEO can do in order to set themselves up to be in a position to grow and scale sales and a sales team is get educated on what it takes to be a true consultative seller in the B2B space. Period. Because once you do that, look at the power it gives you when you hire a sales manager, a VP, or a person. You know how to talk to them about the motions. Hey, what's the business need and motivation? How do you feel about your ambassador? Are we on track with this with the paper process? And who are the decision makers? So I think when you talk about growth, that's the number one thing CEOs can overcome.
So there's a very different positioning with a CEO title versus account executive too, right? So
yes. You not only have an implied authority, you have the authority.
Right. So how do we transfer that? Because I've been in that position where, I've worked with very famous people, and I've had to build sales teams based on their brand, but they're not the actual person. So now we're dealing with the people that they used to deal with.
Yeah.
And there's a very different positioning and alignment that happens. And without that transfer of credibility, there's a very different positioning there, just as you were explaining, right? And I agree. It's almost like Undercover Boss, that show that used to be on television, right? Where the boss would put on whatever makeup, a wig or whatever, and they make him up in another person. Then she'd go and work in the environment that all the workers are working in. And then, dramatic crying, like, oh my God, I didn't realize how I affected people. Right. So, but it's true. Like, especially if it's a guru business, right? If it's guru business where it's like the guru's everywhere, and then you got some transferability if they're well known, but many gurus aren't well known out of their circle, right? And then so when you bring people out of the circle, they're like, who's this person? I talk to people today who still don't know who Tony Robbins or Oprah Winfrey or, you name it, right? There's people, we go, what do you mean you don't know who Warren Buffett is or Jeff Bezos, right? Like, they just don't know that person.
Yeah.
But it doesn't surprise me, because I was just reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and in Christopher Walken, they did a interview with him, and he's never owned a cell phone. And I'm like, what? How can you not own a cell phone? Right? But he's Christopher Walken, so hey,
well,
he
owns a person who carries a cell phone.
Yeah, probably. He's probably got a couple people there. Hey, Doug, hand me my cell phone, right?
Yeah,
or your cell phone. Hand me Doug's.
Yeah, guy's got a mobile paper. Like you used to put this quarters in the phones, like a mobile phone, but he's got an old phone booth on his back, walking around with it.
It's funny. So one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about, if we could, because I think this plays in AI today, right?
Yeah.
People are they're stuck in the lack of momentum moving place, with AI. And I find a lot of people now are fearing AI. It's like, literally, it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take our jobs. It's going to eat my, my new automobile is going to be eaten and changed into another, electric vehicle, whatever. Right. And it's a different technology. That's the way I look at it, Ken. And by the way, folks, we're speaking with Mr. Ken Lundin. I didn't give you a plug here, Ken. RevHeat is the company. And
if you're this far in it, you obviously really like Doug and I already.
Yeah, exactly. But I was like, well, I didn't plug him. But with AI, why are people afraid of it? I mean, where's this going, in your opinion?
I think, it's funny. I do think we didn't plan this, but I think it correlates pretty well with the topic at hand, right? I think we're scared of the unknown. We're scared of change. It's interesting. So I've been looking and watching AI now for a few years. And it was about 15 or 18 months ago that all of a sudden, just boom. And it's now all of a sudden it's usable. It doesn't require weird programming. It's starting to make sense, and it's usable in an everyday use case. And that was just kind of from an informational perspective. And then look, now, like, we're actually having AI agents built into our funnels and our sales systems.
Yep.
Right. And now we've got, instead of just AI giving me information, I actually have AI doing work. And so I think it's the speed of the change that's coming is the first thing. The second thing I can tell you in sales, we did a report I guess it was last year now, in 2024. It was called the state of sales skills. I don't know. I forgot the name of the report. State of sales skills, engineering excellence, right? And so we did a study with one of our partners on just under 13,000 sales reps. And what we looked at is, my belief is 50% of salespeople don't have the necessary skills in order to be successful in sales, let alone in the industries that they're in. So now when you talk about AI, when it comes to sales, that 50% should be terrified because they're not adding any value anyway.
Right.
So I think what you're going to find, so AI is interesting. I think today, we're even testing some AIs that do outbound calling, because guess what? So if you're a CEO who feels like this, you're not alone. But like every CEO I talk to, if they are smart about this at all, hates managing like a BDR or SDR appointment setting team. Right. Like, it's like, no disrespect to Elvis, but it's like a peanut butter and banana sandwich. It's just not good. So we have this problem with that component. And so we are testing some of that as far as, can we get it to sound and it's a 3 to 5 minute conversation. Long term, here's what I believe. And there's a bunch of nuances, as you would bet, but if you are a consultative selling organization, if you're somebody who's adding value and is consistently talking to prospects and clients about their problems, and you just happen to have really cool solutions that fix their problems, AI will only supplement and help you go gangbusters. On the other hand, for any companies who are over on the other side, which is the vast majority of them, where they're selling features and functions and forms, their sales teams are taking orders and not doing business, be scared, because your cost of actually doing business is probably going to increase, because the number one thing companies are doing wrong today, we can talk about Salesforce doing all this agent stuff. The number one thing companies are doing wrong today is they're trying to find a way to use AI before they've actually established working systems and processes, and they're trying to skip that step.
Right.
And all you're going to do is drive the cost up and kill your brand.
So we got a few minutes. I want to delve into that because I think it's important. Like we're always in sales. We're doing one of three things, from what I know: solving a problem for someone else, helping them gain an opportunity that they were looking to gain, or achieve a goal, with a time frame, as you said, right, to the goal. Yeah. And so if we don't play by those rules and we put AI in, you can make a little process happen quicker, faster, easier. But the reality is, we're not focused on what the end process of selling is all about anyways, which, to me is always win-win-win, not just win-win. Right. So, so tell me, like, you mentioned Salesforce and you mentioned, the AI agent type process or whatever.
Yeah.
What should people be now, understanding what that goal is, right? What they're trying to do. And I agree with you. If they're doing all this stuff, the competitors are going to widen their margins, and the other people are going to decrease their margins because they're, we're still trying to run the car with stone wheels, so to speak, right? I mean, that's kind of how I see AI. But so talk to me about agents, talk to everybody about agents. Like what should they be doing? Because AI is not to be feared, folks. Plus, it's not going away.
Yeah. I've been arguing that the whole idea of these this pesky internet thing, I think it's just a one hit wonder, and it'll be out of here in 10 years. Mm-hmm. I mean, or at least that's what people were saying 10 years ago.
Yeah. Of course.
So the difference is, so agents themselves can actually do the work. And so if you're talking about repetitive tasks that have a way that they can be done over and over again at the same standard, then agents end up working well. Like the agents that we're sticking into our sales funnel at RevHeat as an example, they basically end up, they are done by where the buyer is in the journey, right? So we don't do it by just our goal, but we create a series of them based upon, are they in the awareness stage, and what do they need in that to actually move to the next stage? And so AI agents are pretty cool because they can help you move people through the process without them having to have actual conversations or relying on them actually getting what they need out of the random marketing material that you made because you thought it was cool.
Right.
Right. So I think the AI agents are cool, but I think to illustrate your point real quick, that we had talked about people who use it well will have better margins. They'll accelerate the scale of their companies, all that stuff, versus the people who won't. All you got to do really, folks, is think back to 2019. There was a company called SalesLoft. There was another one called Outreach. And what they did is they basically let you go to market and scale your emails. And so what people did is they said, well, you know what? We're not going to put the systems and process in. We're not going to understand how to actually write good emails, how to write good copy, how to speak about it, but we're just going to send out 20,000 emails a month.
Right.
We had a client do that back then. We took them from 20,000 to 2,000 emails over the course of a month. So decreased by approximately 90%. And they scheduled 43 appointments a month versus 6. My point on that's not the word rate. My point on that, though, is it's about focus. And we've already seen this play out once recently. So yeah, AI, there's a lot of really cool stuff. But if you ignore knowing the fundamentals of what it looks like, how are you ever going to be able to compare it to what's good? Right? If you don't know what your existing conversion rate is for whatever this thing is, and then you put an AI agent on it, how do you know if it's terrible or great? So I think you don't have a choice. I think you need to look at it from a supplemental perspective. And then you need to decide how much of an appetite for risk you have. Because what I mean from that is, if you have an appetite for risk, maybe you're trying these AI appointment centers. If you don't have an appetite for risk, maybe you're just trying stuff that's going to go into your system and it's going to organize contracts and be able to send out agreements. But yeah, it's not going away. We've seen this once. The question you have to ask yourself, though, is, you going to play the game or avoid the game?
Well, it's not, if we avoid the game, I'm sure there's somewhere, somehow, some father that said to his son or maybe even daughter back then, if you learn how to fix this carburetor, you'll always have a job in the mechanic world, or the steam engine will always be here. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe in someone's lifetime that's true, but the reality is that things are moving a lot faster now due to technology because just the internet alone, right? So I don't think it's even a question, can we or can't we anymore, right? Because there's so many billions and billions and billions of dollars being dumped. I just saw Reid Hoffman, the original founder of LinkedIn, right? He just got 24.5 or so million dollars for a new AI startup, right?
Yeah.
It's not stopping.
Yeah.
And so I think it's either embrace it or not. But I don't ever think, now this is the last question I want to ask on this subject. Do you ever think that human to human connections ever going to be replaced by AI in selling?
No.
Yeah, I don't either.
No, but because you said that in a all or nothing question.
Right.
Right. So I think it's no to the all or nothing question. But I think depending on the sale, the dollar amount, who it goes to, and the product market fit,
right,
what you will see is you'll see that we can replace the human to human connection into a higher dollar sale than we ever would have thought was possible. So like, think about this. I had a client who sold software. And I have another client who sells software, they also offer custom engineering, software engineering solutions. I was telling them in a sales kickoff just last week, I said, look, I have software clients who've actually never done a demo and still sold.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, no way. And I'm like, yeah, because they were tied to the client value. They understood the product market fit. They knew the problems they were trying to get to. And all the prospect wanted to know is, can you solve this problem for me? And they had enough credibility with other things that they got it done. So now apply that broadly to how AI can influence the world.
Good point.
Right? ICPs, personas, it'll come up. But if you want to sell high gross margin, high tickets, scalable services and software, scalable services in general, You better figure out how to consultative sell, because it's one of the lies CEOs tell themselves.
I firmly agree with you because I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think consultative selling is even going to become more important with AI, because it's kind of like AI. We're seeing, not AI, we're not seeing it, but we're seeing kind of what AI is starting to do to the society, even in like grocery stores.
Yeah.
You walk in there and now it's all, even Walmart's doing it, self-checkout, right? Self-checkout. Well, people go, well, that's not AI. No, you are the AI agent at that point, as the individual. That way I look at it, because you're taking your stuff, you're putting it in the basket, you're walking it in, you're checking it out. Not a human being is basically even talking to one person anymore, and you leave. Well, before they needed labor to do that. They needed people in the store to actually assist, right? And I personally don't like it because I'm an old guy, right? I like to talk to people. Plus, and I'm a very chatty that way. But I went into Whole Foods last night. We checked out. No one even said hello. It was like, you walk in and walk out. So this is kind of like an AI agent, folks. For those of you who don't know, like, Doug was the actual AI agent. I went and picked everything off the shelves and I did all the job. But, imagine this happening at hyperspeed. Like, Doug walks in the store and all this stuff is already in his basket, checked out, and I just check it and I'm gone, right? That's kind of how AI will speed up the process within your sales process or any process within a company. So, I wanted to ask you, Ken, I heard rumor that you're having a 90-day challenge coming out is it true? You got
Yeah, sort of. We're having so it's a 5-day challenge that nobody's terrified. Okay. So we're starting with a 5-day challenge, but we also have, after that, we have what we call our 90-day sales transformation program. So the 5-day challenge is going to happen, here over the course of the next few weeks, dates to come. And what we're doing is we're actually saying, hey, come in for just an hour a day for 5 days. And by the time you leave that, you have also made a meaningful impact on deals in your pipeline. And by the way, you'll have a 90-day roadmap where you know that you can take that through, whether it's you or your team, and actually transform the way that you sell for the rest of the year. So yeah, that's coming up, and we're super excited because here's the big difference. Based upon CEOs and businesses being able to do this with us, we've been able to reduce the price by about 75%, which is massive, because we're trying, what we want to do, the why we're doing this is that I want to go be able to help 10,000 sales reps, because I know that if I can help them be more client-centric and be better at selling, that we're going to help companies. And so we've got that coming out, and that program specifically for CEOs, salespeople in the B2B space. So yeah, I appreciate you mentioning it, but yeah, we're fired up about it.
So can I get a link and put it in the show notes for people?
Absolutely. We'll make sure that we get that to you. It's I'm telling you what, we've done $1 billion with our sales methodologies and training with our clients. It's in the book, Strategic Selling Unleashed. But this is a chance to go face to face with me. And this is stuff we don't have in the book or anywhere else. So I'm like, I got goosebumps talking about it. I'm fired up.
That's awesome. Well, Ken, I appreciate you being here on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, bringing your A game. I know there's some people really pondering our conversation right now. For those of you who are crying on the side of the road in your car, we don't apologize. I can tell you that right now. So, because it may be the motivation that one needs just to move to the next level, right? And that's why you and I show up every single day. So, yeah. So thanks again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you. And I'll tell you the one last thing on the way out. They want to know why AI matters. As the time of this recording, DeepSeek AI just came out from China, and it cut the total cost of processing by about 85% from what we're doing in the United States. Moore's law is real, man. Like, come on, people. Change is the only thing that's not going to stop.
Yeah, the chip manufacturers are starting to get a little concerned over here. I saw that, and also, and for those of you who are wondering, you gotta read about this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, stay on top of it, right? So Ken, thanks so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Appreciate you, Doug.
All right, you got a lot of notes there. Have you learned that homeostasis is not your friend? Freezing is not your friend, and that having a truthful, committed goal and knowing the reasons why is step number one. And once you've got step number one, then you can put in the first little step to create that momentum to moving you to the next step and the next step based on a plan that you build that's truthful. See, if you don't have the right fit, truthful goal for yourself, then you're going to build a plan on something you don't want in the first place. And it's not going to help you move to that next level. All right, speaking of the next level, those of you who want predictable revenue, you want to do, increase in your sales, you want to do it easier, you want to do it predictably. We have a math-based metrics model that we could show you, and feel free to reach out to me. And if you're looking to not drop the ball on follow-up, in other words, you're losing money, sales, relationships, or not gaining that money, sales, or relationships, and it's due to follow-up. Like, I just want to follow up, but it's so darn hard to do it. We've resolved both of these challenges for you. So reach out to me directly at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com by email and let me know what you're thinking. We'll have a conversation and let's see what we can do to help you. All right, until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast, saying go out and sell something, sell a lot of it, play win-win-win. Make someone happy, make yourself happy. You're all going to win. Don't discount. I say this every time. If you discount unnecessarily, you've got to make multiple sales to make it up. Until next time, to your success.